how do we format our screens or our layouts in Signagelive for multi-screen display? So as you can see, I've got a screen behind me at the moment. That is a BrightSign XE5 that I'm currently running. This is a single image that is expanding across all 4 of the screens thanks to the multi-outputs on the actual device itself. What do you do when you want to configure this for different pieces of content on each screen? So there are multiple ways you could do this. At the moment, we have 4 4K screens here, and obviously they're in portrait, meaning that the resolution is 2160 by 3840. If you times that by 4, you've got a total resolution of 8640 by 3840, right? So we've got 8640 long ways and we've got 3840 height ways. You could just create your content in a single base video like that. So you could have a video that has that resolution or an aspect ratio similar to that, and you could just span that across the 4 screens as I'm doing here. But in our case, what we're going to do today is configure a layout within Signagelive that will allow you to have 4 unique pieces of content on each of those screens. Today, the player we are working with, as I said, is the BrightSign XE5, which is this video wall here. It's a 4x1 setup, and what we are going to do is make a layout that's going to go on that. So first things first, we need to go into content and then layouts. We're going to create a brand new layout like so. So click the blue plus in the top left, then click the layout button. Upon doing so, we are greeted with our canvas. The canvas is going to be spanned across all 4 of the screens regardless, right? So what we're actually trying to do here is tactically place elements on our layout so that they are within the confines of each of the screens. And we can do that by using the pixels and using the mapping of those pixels when we're mapping content to this layout. The first thing we need to do is find out what our total resolution is of all 4 of the screens. As I said earlier, this is going to be 8640 by 3840. So what we're going to do is go onto layout properties here. We're going to set our width to be 8640 in this case, and our height 3840. So now you can see, if I zoom out a little bit, my layout is now humongous. That is now consuming much more of my screen, but that means that we are ready to start putting content on this. So that is now the total resolution of all 4 of those screens. And now what we need to do is map our schedulable zones, and schedulable zones are zones within the layout editor that allow you to map particular content to them. So in our case, you can either map static assets to them, or you can map playlists to them, which is what we're going to do today, because that will allow us to create this multi-screen experience and add different content into each of the screens. So first things first, we're going to grab a schedulable zone like so. We're going to click on it. And what it's going to do is just put this straight in the middle of the canvas. And now, if we click on this, we can drag this around, we can resize this as we wish, but we're going to want to be as precise as we can with this, because we want to make sure that these are mapped to the correct pixels that are going to align with the screens behind us. If I go onto zone properties here, I have the X and Y coordinates, and I have the width and height. Now, all 4 of these screens are 4K screens. So the resolution that we know by default is going to be 2160 by 3840. And that is the resolution of one of these screens. And now what I need to do is put this to the first pixel in our layout. So I'm going to go to the X coordinates. I'm going to go to 0, and I'll put that there. I'm also going to put our Y coordinate to 0 as well. And there we have screen number 1. This screen that I'm pointing out with my pen now, that's where that content is going to be mapped. Now we are going to go to Layer Navigator, and I'm going to call this screen 1. Now we're going to add another schedulable zone, and we're going to do the exact same process. So we're going to do that like so. I'm actually going to name the layer now, since we're already in the layer navigator. I'm going to call that screen 2. I'm now going to go on to zone properties again. Again, we know the width and the height are going to be the same. So it's going to be 2160 by 3840. But what we now need to do is map this so the pixels line up with pixel 2160 in this case. So what we're going to do is go 0 on the Y coordinates, and then we're going to go 2160 on the X coordinates. And now you can see that we're beginning to see what this is going to look like. We've got the 2 zones for each of those screens, and now we follow suit and do the third one. Same thing again, we've got the width as 2160. We've got the height as 3840, like so. Again, our Y coordinates are going to be 0, and this time we essentially need to go 2160 times 2, which is going to be 4320 in my case. So we're going to put that at 4320. That's our third zone, times 2160 by 3, and that is going to give us our fourth and final zone. So that's going to be 6480, which will be where the next schedulable zone is going to sit over here. So once again, finally, we're going to add that schedulable zone like so. Punch in our coordinates again for the zone itself. So this is the resolution of the zone by 3840. Y coordinates once again can be 0, and the X coordinates finally are going to be 6480. So now we have our 4 zones. I'm going to make sure that I've named each of those as well under the layer navigator. So if you click on each of these, you can actually see what one you are selecting. In my case, this one here is going to be screen 3. This one here is going to be screen 4. And that is step 1 of this done now. So now we have a layout that is formatted so that it will span across this collection of screens behind me. And we have a schedulable zone tactically placed in the correct pixels so that each of those zones will appear on one of the screens each. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and save this layout. Now the layout's saved. This is the part where we can essentially go through the process of publishing this layout. And when we've published the layout, we can then map our content to each of the zones on the layout. So I'm going to head to content, publish, between the chosen time and dates in my case. What do I want to publish? I'm going to click layout, Joe 4x1 layout. Remember I mentioned earlier that we're going to make sure that we name each of our schedulable zones, and this is why we've done that, because now we can see screens 1, 2, 3 and 4 are all correctly mapped here, and I can actually tell which one is which. I'm just going to select random playlists for now. I actually know what playlists I want to put on this in this case. Zone 1 is going to go there. Click on my next zone. You can see I'm getting a real-time preview of some of this content already. Zone 2 is going to go there. Zone 3 is going to go there. And then finally, Zone 4 is going to go there. Essentially, we have all 4 of our zones side by side, and now we're ready to publish this to our screens. So we're going to go to step 3, select my screen, which in my case is going to be this one here. Hit publish to players, and now we're going to wait for this content to download. Now what you can see, our content is now downloaded, and we've got a unique piece of content on each of our screens here. And that simply was by adding 4 schedulable zones to a layout, making sure that the zones, they're mapped correctly, and then because they're mapped in the correct areas in terms of pixels, they're immediately shown on screen.